Hi, I'm Don from dondroneson. Ever since I put out my study guide on the basic operations drone pilot exam, I've been inundated with requests for a study guide for advanced operations. Well, here it is. Don's study guide for the Canadian RPAS Advanced Operations Pilot Exam. Alright, let's get right into it. Three basic chunks here. Number one, the basic requirements for the Advanced Operations Pilot Certification. Number two, the meat of the matter, the exam preparation. I'll cover the basic rules, then I'll get into the 8 knowledge areas covering what you need to know and some of the key facts for each of those areas. At the end of that, I'll have a compendium of the reference material that you should have on hand when you take your exam. So number 3 are some tips and tactics that I've pulled together based on my experience that will help you get through this very challenging exam. Let's make sure that we all understand the difference between basic versus advanced operations. It really breaks down into 3 areas. Number 1 is the proximity to airports and controlled airspace. In basic operation, you have to stay out of that stuff. In advanced operations, you can go within 5.6 kilometers of an airport, with appropriate approval of course, and within 1.9 kilometers of a heliport. And you can also enter controlled or restricted airspace, again with approval and also with the right kind of drone. Second area is proximity to people not involved in the operation. So again, assuming that you have the right drone that's been approved for this kind of operation, you can fly up to 5 meters away from bystanders, and you can fly over bystanders when flying a drone approved for that purpose. You still can't fly over an advertised event, even with your Advanced Operations Certificate. An advertised event is something like a parade or a sporting event. And the kind of drone you're flying makes a big difference for some of these activities, and we'll get into that in a minute. With this in mind, what are the requirements for your Advanced Operations certification? You, as the pilot, need to pass the online Advanced Operations pilot exam. You also need to pass a separate in-person flight review. And on a regular basis, you need to prove your recency to those qualifications, either through training or taking the exams again, and you have to do that every 2 years. Your drone itself has some requirements, as I mentioned. The drone must be approved for the type of advanced operation you're performing, whether that be in controlled airspace, near people, or over people. I keep mentioning these 8 knowledge areas. Well, here they are. They're exactly the same 8 knowledge areas as in the basic exam. Air law, which is essentially your regulations, stuff about the hardware, human factors, meteorology, navigation, flight operations, theory of flight, and radio telephony. You'll notice, however, that the distribution of questions has changed quite a bit going into the advanced. Much less emphasis on the regulations, going from 14 to 10, and in most areas, more questions in each. Radio telephony, strangely enough, is exactly the same, but as far as I'm concerned, I saw tougher questions in that area in the advanced than I did in the basic. Maybe I was just lucky. I'll just pause here for a second to mention that all of this material is available for purchase. You would receive a PDF file of the slides with over 40 pages of detailed information. The slides are easily text searchable during your exam, and there are active links to the reference material, so when you're studying, you can quickly look up the details behind each of the points. There's a link in the description area below the video to purchase this material. Thank you for your support. The first knowledge area is air law, air traffic rules, and procedures, and there are 10 questions that you'll see in your exam coming from this area. What do you need to know? Well, this is where the 2019 RPAS regulations come to bear. So you need to know absolutely everything about those regulations, and this is one area you can study very thoroughly and very precisely on. So you really should be able to ace this section. In particular, you need to know the rules related to advanced operations. When you were taking your basic exam, you might have ignored this area because you knew that you didn't need to know it for the basic. Well, in this area, for the advanced exam, you do need it. So you need to know what constitutes an advanced operation, which we've covered. You need to know what's involved in a flight review. And you need to know the standards that are required for each of the 3 categories of drones acceptable for advanced operations. And over and above advanced operations, you need to know when an SFOC is required, an SFOC being a Special Flight Operations Certificate. So in order to learn this stuff, you need to absolutely look through the rules and regulations that are being introduced in June of 2019. This is a link to those actual regulations. However, I would strongly recommend that instead of trying to work your way through this, you watch my videos called The Droner's Guide to the 2019 Canadian RPAS Regulations instead. I do go through each and every one of the regulations, so you'll be able to see them, and you'll be able to hear my explanation of what they actually mean. And if you've already gone through them, you may want to review modules 2 and 3, which talk about the advanced operations, flight reviews, the drones acceptable for advanced operations, and SFOCs. Exactly what we talked about over here. Here's the entire set of videos in that Droner's Guide series. There are eight modules in total. You can see them laid out here. I talked about these 2 in particular, but you may want to go over the entire set. It's exciting material, let me tell you. They do seem to like definitions, particularly in this knowledge area, so I thought I'd pull together a number of key ones that you might come up as a question in your exam or referenced from your exam, and I thought it'd be handy to have all of them in one neat spot here. So, remotely piloted aircraft. This is your basic drone definition, if you like. A navigable aircraft other than a balloon, rocket, or kite that is operated by a pilot who is not on board. Knowing things like that immediately will save you tons of time trying to remember where the heck is that and where did I find it and what is the actual definition. A small RPA, so a little s in front of it, is that it basically refers to the weight, so between 250 grams and 25 kilos. And that, of course, is the main subject of the 2019 regulations. And lastly, RPAS, with the S on the end of the abbreviation, is the whole set of equipment, if you like, that puts together your remotely piloted aircraft. So it's the drone plus the controlling devices like your remote control phone or tablet and things like that. Advanced operations are more likely to happen in a team environment than a basic operation, so it's important to understand some of the people definitions. A visual observer is a trained crew member who assists the pilot in ensuring the safe conduct of a flight under visual line of sight. A crew member, a little complicated definition, but basically someone else who's actively assigned to a duty related to the operation of the drone. A person involved in the operation doesn't have a formal definition, so I've put together this to help us understand. This is a person such as a client, friend, or family member who's participating in the operation, is aware of the risks, but is not a member of the crew. And this kind of role is mentioned in 901.26. And finally, a bystander also doesn't have a formal definition, but is mentioned in many of the regulations. And this is a person who is not involved in any way in the operation, but happens to be in the vicinity. A couple of drone terminology definitions are handy to have at your fingertips. Visual line of sight. This means unaided visual contact at all times with a remotely piloted aircraft that is sufficient to be able to maintain control of the aircraft, know its location, and be able to scan the airspace in which it is operating in order to perform the detect and avoid functions in respect of other aircraft or objects. Mandatory action. This means the inspection, repair, or modification of a remotely piloted aircraft system that the manufacturer of the system considers necessary to prevent an unsafe or potentially unsafe condition. And this comes out in 901.29, where manufacturers of drones for advanced operations are expected to inform owners of these mandatory actions. Important to understand that little phrase and recognize it in a question. Payload. Some people get confused between things that are being carried by the drone and things that are part of the drone's system. So a payload is a system, object, or a collection of objects that is on board or is otherwise connected to a remotely piloted aircraft, but that is not required for flight. So the camera, for example, is considered a payload as opposed to, say, the propellers or motor, which are part of the system. The battery is part of the system. It's required for flight, so the battery is not part of the payload. There are a number of aviation terms that are important to understand as well during your advanced operations exam. Visual flight rules and instrument flight rules, VFR and IFR, are important to distinguish. So VFR is a set of regulations under which a pilot operates an aircraft in weather conditions generally clear enough to allow the pilot to see where the aircraft is going. And this is the normal means of flying when you're in the close to the ground, basically landing, taking off, and that sort of an operation. Instrument flight rules are basically a set of rules and regulations to govern flight under conditions where the outside visual reference isn't safe. So either you're very high or you're in fog or in clouds, and as such the IFR flight depends upon flying using instruments on the flight deck and navigation by radar or other electronic signals. Okay, so VFR and IFR might come up in your questions, and it's important to understand the difference between those. Another curious acronym that comes up is MF, which stands for mandatory frequency, and it is often used around the same time as aerodrome traffic frequency, which is ATF. And these two frequencies, radio frequencies obviously, are defined for an aerodrome in the CFS, the Canada Flight Supplement, which defines all of the information around aerodromes in Canada. And for each aerodrome, it will either indicate a mandatory frequency, which means you must be on that frequency if you are going to be close enough to that aerodrome, and or just the ATF, which isn't mandatory, is just the recommended frequency specified in the CFS for aerodromes. All right, so those are the two kinds of frequencies, and these are the two kinds of flight rules. And by the way, there's a very good glossary of aeronautical terms and an associated list of acronyms in the AIM document in the general information section, which is the first section of the AIM document. Have a look in sections 5.1 and 5.2. Knowledge Area 2 is called RPAS Airframes, Power Plants, Propulsion, and Systems. Basically the hardware and electronics that go into your drone. Or at least that's part of it. You also need to know an astonishing amount of detail around how barometric altimeters work. You need to know how to calibrate them and adjust them at different altitudes as you approach different aerodromes. You need to know what kind of errors you might see in an altimeter, the effect of temperature, and something that surprised me is the effect of mountains and valleys on altimeter readings. Apparently they make a huge amount of difference. There is a good discussion of this in the AIM document in the Air or Airmanship section and chapter 1.5 specifically. A little more close to drone activities is understanding the physics behind how propellers and how they vary can affect a quadcopter motion. There's a very good article I discovered in wired.com that explains, how you go up and down and turn and go left, go right, that kind of stuff. Basically all the physics of how your propellers move in a drone. So have a look at that article, and you might know something that comes up in an exam question. You seem to need to know pretty much every aircraft part ever made. Things that I've never even heard of: stabilators, elevons, trim tabs, Variable pitch rotors. I'm not sure that any of those are on drones or remote control aircraft, but there you go. Collective control, that's a control that's found on a manned helicopter, also found on your advanced exam test, or at least the one I took. Brushless motors, all right, well, that's a drone thing. Why you'd care whether it was brushless or brushed, I don't frankly know from an operational perspective, but there you go. LiDAR. Catapults. Well, some RC planes take off with catapults. You might have a question about catapults on your exam. If you don't know these things immediately, quickly Google them and you'll no doubt find a good definition and be able to answer your exam question. You also need to know the effects of radio frequency interference, potential interference from your phone or other electronic devices when operating a drone, how ice on airfoils, and don't forget airfoils do include propellers, will decrease lift and increase drag. Those are the main effects of having ice on your either on your wings or on your propellers. You need to know the definition of a payload versus a part of the RPAS system, and you need to know about illegal payloads. So basically you can't carry any hazardous items and you can't carry any living creatures. And those are outlined in 901.22 and 901.43. Batteries. I always seem to get a question about batteries whenever I take the exam. Maybe I'm just lucky, I don't know. Carrying lithium-ion batteries on a plane. I've got a page on the next in the next slide that talks about this, but there's a reference to the official guidelines on this from the Canadian Air Transport Security Authority. You are also expected to understand safe battery conditions. So what's your normal battery voltage? Which is a little weird because battery voltages are different from one model to the next, but there you go. I got a question on that. Temperature and freezing, what the effect of that is on a battery, and if you should or should not charge a battery that's frozen. Guess what? You shouldn't. Be aware that swelling means battery is in bad shape and it should not be charging it. That sort of stuff is all good things to know regardless of whether it's on the exam or not. And I'd advise that you have a quick look at this site, the Health Canada battery safety site, for some good tips and techniques. Now, this business about transporting batteries on a passenger plane. Bottom line is two things. It's okay to put it in your carry-on luggage, generally not okay to put it in your checked luggage, and at the very least, you should be asking your carrier before putting anything like that in your checked baggage. Whether or not it's actually installed in your drone doesn't really matter. Just make sure that you know whether you're allowed to do that. Now, one thing that's kind of curious is that these regulations are defined in terms of watt hours. WH stands for watt hours. But if you ever look at your drone's battery specifications, they're usually specified in milliamp hours. So what you need to do is convert milliamp hours to watt hours. It's fairly easy. You divide by 1,000 and multiply by the voltage. And so, for example, Mavic 2 batteries are 3850 milliamp hours and are 15 volts, and this converts to about 60 watt hours. So if you see references to above or below 100 watt hours, you know that most drone batteries are going to fall into the below 100 watt hour neighborhood, at least for recreational drones. And if you're not comfortable doing what I just said, there's a little converter there where you just type in your numbers. Human factors. This is knowledge area 3 on the exam. There are 8 questions in this area. You might want to ask yourself, why are there so many questions about human factors? Well, aside from the usual stuff that they're going to ask you around alcohol and drug use, don't do those things, and certainly alcohol in particular, don't have any consumption of alcohol in the 12 hours prior to your operation, and make sure you and your crew are not under the effects of being tired or fatigued. All of this is outlined in 901.19. Very important part. I think they're probably trying to ask that question on every exam, so you may as well know this one inside out. The other thing though is about medical terminology and some conditions, and I'm going to go into that on the next page. And again, as I mentioned before, because advanced operations are more likely to be a multi-person team, they have asked a number of questions and expect you to know quite a bit about teaming behavior and other behavioral factors. So we'll get into that on the next couple of slides as well. Medical information you need to know. Kind of strange, some of these, particularly for flying your drone outside. Hypoxia, this is related to shortage of oxygen. Now, I might be having that preparing this video, but you're not likely to encounter this on the ground while you're flying your drone. But it's covered in the AIM, section 3.2.1 of the air or airmanship section of the AIM. Similarly, carbon monoxide you're unlikely to encounter, but you might have a question about that one, 3.2.2 in the AIM. Vision and night vision. There's going to be some questions around this, no doubt. Also, the effect of red light on vision. I referenced an FAA article on this one. It talks about night flying, so you might want to read up on that to see the effect. Basically, the way your night vision works is red light affects it a little less than normal other colors of light, and but you can't see details as well when your eyes are adjusted for the night. That's the basic gist of that. You might also encounter questions around disorientation, fatigue, and our old favorite, alcohol, and these are covered in the AIM under sections 3.7, 3.8, and 3.9. I bring these up. I didn't see any questions. Well, I saw the usual question about alcohol, but I didn't see these other ones on my exams, but they are heavily referenced in the knowledge requirements section of the for the exam. Human factors, what I would call sort of behavioral things you need to know. And there are a ton of things referenced in the knowledge requirements, and I encountered an alarming number of these questions or topics like this on my exam when I took it. I did a lot of research, and it seems that everything points back to a Transport Canada document called Human Factors for Aviation Basic Handbook. I have not been able to find a copy of this online, but you can order it. There's a hard copy, and here's the link for that. Alternatively, you can do your own research into these topics, or just answer from common sense. So, factors affecting team communications, the effect of standard operating procedures, mostly the benefits of standard operating procedures, the advantages of checklists, how to manage interruptions if you're going through a checklist, what factors can impact the effectiveness of checklists, a lot of questions around checklists, how automation can affect attention and mental workload. The notion here is that while automation is good in the sense of it allows you to focus on the task at hand, it can also lull you into believing that you don't need to be able to operate your drone manually. And of course you do need to know how to do that. So that topic or question around that topic might come up on your exam. Don't be too surprised. How to minimize the effect of emotion in decision making. That was a cute one that I encountered on my exam. And this was around the notion of panic, I guess. Panic or fear when something goes wrong. I can remember having that happen multiple times. When you lose the control link with your drone, you definitely have an emotional reaction, at least the first few times. So you might encounter some questions around that and how to deal with it. Kind of a strange topic to be on a regulatory exam, but there you go. Similarly, factors affecting situational awareness, such as distractions and things like that, might come up on your exam. Knowledge area number 4 is meteorology, and there are 7 questions you can expect in this area. From what I've seen, you seem to get questions in 2 distinct categories within meteorology. First are general weather-related topics, and the second set are very much more technical, aviation related weather topics. So let's go through those. So general weather related topics, not that terribly difficult to get your head around. You need, of course, to know your rules around weather conditions and not flying in icing conditions or with snow or ice attached to your aircraft. You need to understand how wind and temperature and precipitation can impact your flight. Generally common sense stuff, but there are references to things like that in the AIM. And you may encounter, I certainly encountered, a number of questions around weather conditions like fog, snow, something I'd never heard of called steam fog, ice pellets, sleet, freezing rain, all sorts of weird weather conditions that you are expected not only to be able to recognize, like steam fog, but know what forms them and what conditions can lead to them. If you don't know the answer immediately, Google it and you'll be off to the races. A really important one here is density altitude, and you need to understand what that is and what effects it has. What affects it? Oh, sorry, and what affects it. I'm sorry, I can't even read my own slide here. I've got a slide on this coming up that will talk about density altitude. Now, aviation weather topics to understand, you need to know, and this is again a little strange, but here you go. You need to know all the key Nav Canada weather services, what they are, what they provide, how frequently, and all that kind of stuff. I've outlined a whole bunch of them on the next page and a reference to where you can find them. Actually, they're right here. It's in the AIM in the MET or meteorology chapter. You also need to understand the role of the FIC, the Flight Information Center. This is a telephone hotline, if you like, that you can call up and they will provide you a weather forecast and current weather information as well as part of their flight planning function and role. So knowing about the Flight Information Center is something you should know. In addition, there is something called an air traffic surface, called ATS, and all aerodromes that have an ATS will provide wind and altimeter information upon initial radio contact. So if you're approaching an aerodrome, I think this is mostly for manned aircraft, but you might have a question like this come up on your exam. If you're in a manned aircraft and you approach an aerodrome that happens to have an ATS, so a manned aerodrome, upon your initial radio contact, they'll say, oh, and by the way, the wind is 10 knots from the east or whatever. Here's the list of aviation weather services you should be familiar with, because they'll throw a pile of these acronyms at you on your exam, and you don't want to be spending time trying to figure out what is what. I'm not going to walk through every single one of these, so you might want to pause this and have a good read through, or as I said, you can purchase the study guide, at which point you can read these at your leisure. But a couple that you should be aware of are METARS, which is an acronym which curiously spells Aerodrome Routine Meteorological Report, and this is an hourly report of current weather. So it's not a forecast, but it's a current weather for a specific location. And it gives you all sorts of things: wind, temperature, air pressure, cloud cover, dew point, density, altitude, and a whole lot more, but these are the main ones. Pilot reports, PIREPs, are something that might come up on your exam. These are actually reports not from weather stations, but from pilots in flight, typically at higher altitudes, reporting things like turbulence or severe winds or things like that that weather stations might not be aware of. GFA is a weather map, graphic area forecast, prepared 4 times daily. TAF is a aerodrome specific forecast, and these are often automated and they're coded, so they have magic words and things that that they send out, and these are prepared 4 times daily, and they are forecasts, so they're for the next I can't remember whether it is, but 12 or 24 hours, and they are specific to the vicinity around each particular aerodrome that issues these. I really recommend you are very familiar with these so that you can answer questions quickly and easily on your exam. Density altitude is a key term. I encountered it a couple of times when I took the exam, and it relates to air pressure, and it basically says density altitude is the altitude relative to standard atmospheric conditions at which the air density would be equal to the indicated air density. So in other words, the density altitude is the air density given as a height above mean sea level. So if you're told that your density altitude is, say, 500, it means that it's the same density as if you were at 500 feet above sea level. Now, why is that important? Well, density altitude is all around your air pressure, basically, the density of the air where you're flying. And air pressure and the air density is the single most important factor in terms of aircraft performance. If you're at in a low air pressure situation, your wings and or propellers, in the case of a quadcopter, will not give as much lift as when you're in a denser air situation. So it's an important concept. And there's different things that affect your density altitude. If you increase the temperature, your density altitude goes up. If you decrease the air pressure, your density altitude goes up. And to a lesser extent, if you increase your humidity, the density altitude goes up. So have a look at that. Here's a Wikipedia reference that talks about density altitude. In fact, this is from that, but it gives a little more detail if you're interested. Don't be astonished to see a question about density altitude on your exam. Now, to be honest, I didn't see the Beaufort wind scale come up on any of the exams I had, and I'm not even sure if it was in the knowledge requirements. But as a drone operator, I use this kind of a sort of natural ability to tell how windy it is all the time. If I see the trees bending over at 90 degrees, I'm probably not going to go out and fly. So I thought I'd throw this in here just as something to help you out. The Beaufort wind scale, it basically is the ability to estimate the wind based on things you see either in trees or with flags or over the water. And it is outlined in the AIM document in the MET chapter section 2.6. Knowledge area 5 is navigation, and you should expect to see 5 questions from this category come up in your advanced operation exam. Sorts of things that you should know in this area are the definitions of latitude and longitude, what a meridian is, what local mean time is, particularly between meridians or between time zones. You need to know a fair bit about aeronautical charts, what scale is used on aeronautical charts, how to read your elevation on an aeronautical chart, different symbols on a chart, and again, how to identify latitude and longitude on charts. NOTAMs, or Notices to Airmen, is a topic that can come up on your exam, and they're described in the MAP chapter of the AIM. Basically, a NOTAM is an indication of some temporary change in the conditions, or perhaps a new tower or crane or a light being out on a runway, things like that are temporary changes to what you would normally expect when flying. This kind of thing is important to know as a drone operator because it can indicate that perhaps where you are flying is a no-fly zone for the next 2 days because of I don't know, something going on in the atmosphere or on the ground or whatever. You need to know about radio theory. You need to know about radio waves, what affects them in terms of their propagation. You need to know the difference between frequency and amplitude and that sort of stuff. If this comes up and you're not familiar with that, I would recommend you Google it. You need to know about what can affect GPS, Global Positioning System, reception. need to know about what happens at higher latitudes in particular, and in mountain ranges with regard to GPS reception, and this is documented in the AIM. Actually, it's in that same map section. And last but not least, and perhaps even most importantly, you need to know how to read the CFS, the Canada Flight Supplement, and its sister companion, the Water Aerodrome Supplement documents, to be able to identify aerodrome operators and air traffic control agencies, amongst other things. Don't be surprised if you see a picture from a CFS on your exam and you're asked questions about it. So let's have a look at one of these. So this is a real CFS entry or listing. It's for Medicine Hat, Alberta, and so you can see it shows you a little diagram of the airport, shows you the runways and their lengths and their runway numbers. Let's run through some of the key information on this. So the aerodrome name is listed here. Everything in the Canada Flight Supplement is an aerodrome. Not everything is an airport. You should watch my video about aerodromes if you don't understand that difference. It's really, really crucial to understand. So at the top of the CFS listings, and the WAS listings are very, very similar, you are given the location, the elevation above sea level. Where is that? Oh, here it is. Elevation, 2351 feet, and the time zone, universal time -7. The operator, which is OPR, this is the person you need to call to fly, for permission to fly near this aerodrome. So there's their phone number. And over on this side, I mentioned that this keyword CERT is something to look for to indicate that this is an official airport. CERT means it's a certified aerodrome, and that's the magic word that you look for to determine whether it's an airport or not. I mentioned flight information centers earlier. The FIC that's appropriate to the or applicable to this aerodrome is listed here. It gives you the location and the number to call. And similarly, the area control center, mostly concerned, you would only call that for high altitude flights, but it is listed there. WX, by the way, underneath it is for weather. I don't know what the X stands for, weather services or something. And you can see here it lists the METAR and the automated METAR and the TAF and all sorts of stuff. WX cam I didn't mention on that little list, but that's basically a weather cam. All right. NOTAM information is also listed in this section around flight planning, and the NOTAM reference. So if you check out NOTAMs, you have to enter in an airport code. So that's the code to put in, CYXH, to determine the NOTAMs associated with Medicine Hat or in the Medicine Hat area. All right, and Canada Flight Supplements have all sorts of other information. I've cut it off about halfway down here, but you will also see other information about radio frequencies and things like that in the CFS. All right, the next section is Knowledge Area 6, or Flight Operations, and you should expect 7 questions from the question pool in this topic area. You need to know about aerodromes, airports, and heliports, and some of the rules around those in terms of what you have to do. I've got a whole page on that and a whole video on that one, so just one moment. You need to understand typical flight paths around aerodromes when manned aircraft are taking off and landing. You need to know about runway numbering, because radio references might be to planes landing or taking off on a particular runway, so you need to know what that means. You need to understand the effective density altitude, which we just talked about on aircraft performance, so I'm not going to go into that at all because we talked enough about that. And then some general knowledge things: the effect of wind on performance and range, the effect of ice on airfoils, which we've already talked about as well, decreasing lift and increasing drag. And in the flight operations area, you need to know that for your RPAS operation, you need to have written down procedures for pre-flight checks, launch procedures, recovery procedures, and emergency procedures. And you also need to know about reporting accidents and incidents. Aerodromes, airports, and heliports. I am not going to cover all of this, or we'd be here for another hour probably, but this is all covered in a video that I did called Aerodromes Explained. I'll put a link up in the top right if I can remember. Otherwise you can find it on my YouTube channel. Runway numbering. An easy topic, but why waste time during your exam? Why not figure it out right now? So runways are numbered based on the direction the plane is flying in. So if a plane has a heading of 220 degrees, which is roughly southwest, the corresponding runway is runway 22. You divide the direction by 10. And that is the magnetic direction, or magnetic azimuth, not the geographical true direction. All right, so you need to know that. And runways have a number on each end. So in this direction, it's 22. And in the other direction, you add 18 or subtract 18, and you'll be at 4. So the corresponding runway in the other direction is runway 4, going at 40 degrees, roughly north in the direction northeast. Okay, you can see them on the CFS map here. See runway 1 and 19, 7 and 25. Standard airfield traffic pattern. I got a question related to this on the exam, so I looked it up and figured it out on the fly. But it takes a lot of time to do that. This is called the standard left-hand pattern because the plane is always turning left. It approaches the aerodrome into this direction. It hits the upwind leg, takes a corner around, and the final approach is like that. So understanding this and the different terminology, the base leg, the crosswind leg, and so forth, that might come up in one of your exams. And here's a reference in Wikipedia to airfield traffic patterns. Knowledge Area 7 is the theory of flight. And you should expect 4 questions on this one while you're on your exam. A lot of the same topics that were on the basic exam, but perhaps a little more complicated or in depth. So you should know about Bernoulli's principle of lift, drag, center of gravity, turbulence, laminar flow, equilibrium, all that kind of stuff. If you're not sure about this, Google it and learn about it. I do have a diagram about airfoil terminology on the next page. That might help you out as well as a quick reference guide. You should understand the effect of altitude, temperature, air pressure, and humidity on aircraft performance. That's all tied into the theory of flight. I talked about that in the density altitude section. The simplest way to remember this is the denser the air, the better the aircraft will perform. Aircraft components affecting longitudinal, lateral, and directional stability. Lots of weird questions that could come up around that. For example, you should know about dihedrals. And again, you may just want to, as a practice run, Google that and understand that if you don't already. And once again, you could expect to get a question, even in this theory of flight neck of the woods, about aircraft components and how they operate. So spoilers, flaps, trim tabs, what they do, helicopter tail rotors, all sorts of stuff. And again, if you don't know it right off the top of your head, quickly Google it and you'll be away. Airfoil terminology. So I'm not going to drain this because you can freeze frame and have a look at it at your leisure, or again, it could be it is in the study guide PDF that you can purchase from me. There's also a Wikipedia reference up here to understand what all these things do. One little thing, and it really annoyed me when I was taking the exam, because I got 2 questions on the airfoils. They both referenced the word chord. I don't remember if it was in the question or the answer, but for some reason Transport Canada spells chord incorrectly, and that just drove me nuts. I don't know why. Last knowledge area is knowledge area 8 on radio telephony. 4 questions in this area. Personally, I found these ones a little tough to handle, but it's an area that you can study fairly well because there's a great study guide that's available online called the ROC-A, which is the Restricted Operator Certificate Study Guide for Aeronautical Use. And it talks all about aeronautical communications over the radio. So you should be familiar with aviation radio frequencies that are in the AIM and in that document there. You should know how to communicate with air traffic control, what to do if you lose contact with air traffic control, again that's in the AIM, how to report an incident with your drone or a potential incident like a flyaway. You need to have a good understanding of the generic aviation rules, regulations, and procedures around radio telephony, like how you talk like a guy on flying a plane. That's in ROC-A. Sorry, I'm laughing about this because it's kind of strange, but you should be able to decipher the jargon that is used and the protocols that they use. You could get a question on your exam about the phonetic alphabet and the numbering protocol, and I'll show you that on the next page, and also about radio jammers. For some peculiar reason you might need to know about that. By the way, radio jammers are prohibited in Canada. Very simple. That's in the AIM. So many things are in the AIM. So, you know, if you're coming across something in your exam and you don't know the answer and you don't think it's a Google-ish kind of thing, check in the AIM. It's probably there. Phonetic alphabet and numbers. This is the Alpha Delta, Roger Ramjet sort of stuff. Here's the alphabet. You might want to have this handy or a similar version of it while you're on the exam in case they throw one of these guys at you. All right, and here's the reference in a NAV Canada document on phraseology. That was quite handy that I found. Radio checks and the readability scale. I'm not sure, but I got a couple of questions in this area. This basically talks about the procedure that's followed to ensure that good communications is possible on the radio. It's a quick check that is done. It's supposed to last less than 10 seconds to ensure that you are reading the other person loud and clear. Loud and clear is not the right term, by the way. It's things like I am reading you 5, I am reading you 1, this kind of stuff. So you should understand the protocol associated with that, and it's in that study guide called the ROC-A. All right, here are the key reference materials that you will need to have open and available to you. There's 2 pages of them. These are active links in the PDF document. Here's the second page. I'm not going to read through this, obviously. Let's go over some exam tips and tactics that I would recommend you consider when preparing for and actually executing your exam. First of all, don't panic if you get a crazy question. Just buckle down and go at it. Google it, Control F, find it, whatever. Second of all, pick a quiet place with no interruptions. It will not help if you've got dogs jumping up and down and kids running around. And ensure you have a good, solid, high-speed internet connection. If you're in a rural area, maybe you want to go into a library or something like that to have a good, solid connection. If at all possible, have 2 screens available to you so you can have your questions on one screen and your reference material on a second screen. Very handy. Also handy to have a paper and pen handy to jot down numbers and little diagrams and stuff like that. Do aim to pass your exam. Keep that in mind, but don't be surprised if you fail. It would be, not too many people pass on the first try. The key thing, though, is to learn from your mistakes, and that, again, is why having a paper and pen handy is a good idea. So you can jot down terminology that you're not familiar with, so that between exams you have time to look it up. Studying. I know this might sound funny, but I recommend you watch all of my videos related to the new regulations, particularly the Droner's Guide to the 2019 Canadian RPAS Regulations, especially modules 2 and 3 because they're focusing on the advanced operations topics, and the Aerodromes Explained video. Again, Might be a little funny for me to be recommending my own videos, but so many people have commented on how much they have helped them when they're taking their exams. Can't hurt. So go ahead and do that. In addition, familiarize yourself with the reference documents that I provide or anything else that you find. Just look through it. If you're not going to read it word for word, understand what's in each of those documents, particularly the AIM document. I've mentioned this several times in this video, how much information is in this document. It's about 500 pages, I think. And these are the sections. Might want to just look at that for 1 second. There's a general section. This is where your acronyms are. There's a section on aerodromes, piece on communications and navigation. Meteorology section is brilliant. You'll learn a lot about weather reading that section. Rules of the air, not all that important compared for drone stuff, and North Atlantic operations and search and rescue aren't that important. But the map section on aeronautical charts is critical, and the airmanship section has a lot of good information in it as well. When you're taking the exam, the most important tip that I could recommend is that you do stick your tongue out the side of your mouth. It'll really help keep your concentration. I'm sorry. The most important thing really is to have all of your reference documents open and in front of you on your screen, and know what's in them. Be fast and furious with your searching. Practice searching for terms using Control F in Acrobat Reader or Google, that kind of stuff. Watch your time. Your time remaining is shown on the screen in the exam user interface, so just keep an eye on that. Don't get stuck. Like if you do not know the question, the answer to a question, note it down and move on. Do make sure that you answer every single question. Don't leave any unanswered. And again, the unanswered questions are highlighted on the user interface, so just double check that before you submit. And if you are going to guess at an answer, don't just guess C because the answer is always C, but eliminate the obviously wrong answers first. There's only 4 options, so if you eliminate 2 of them, you got a 50-50 chance of being right, even if you're just flipping a coin. Don't flip a coin, that takes too much time. And also, there's no penalty for wrong answers, so you may as well guess if you honestly don't know the answer to a question. This is an interesting tip and something I found myself doing. I did take the advanced exam twice, by the way, before I passed. I kept 3 lists on a piece of paper. Number 1 list was just the numbers, the question numbers, that I was totally guessing at. So if I ran across something and I had no idea what it was, I wrote down question number 3 or question number 52 or whatever, and that helped me because at the end, if I had a little time left over, I could go back and have another look at it, and maybe my brain had figured it out while I was completing the rest of the exam. I had another list of questions I wasn't certain of, but I had a pretty good feeling about. So if I had time to review these ones as the top priority, I could then go to list number 2 to check those over and review them. And the third list is just to jot down terms or acronyms, like density altitude, for example, was on my first run through of the test. Didn't have a clue what that was. I jotted down that term and I learned about it between exams. So consider it a learning experience. You know, if you're not going to pass, at least you'll learn something from it. You won't necessarily get the same questions, but many of the topics are repeated from one exam to the next. And of course, budget your time to allow some time at least to go back and review your answers, and you can use these lists to focus in on the questions that you want to spend the most time on. Last but not least, envision success. I know this is kind of a mind game that people tout, but it actually makes sense. Envision yourself having that woohoo moment at the end of your exam, and it might help your mental state in getting through it. That's it. That's all. Speaking of getting through it, this has taken forever. I hope you have learned a lot here and have enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Hit the bell so you're notified of future videos, and leave a comment. I always read my comments and reply to every single one of them. Thank you very much for your time, and good luck on your Advanced Operations Certification exam.